There is a stretch of water in the Middle East that is 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. Every single day, 20% of the world's oil passes through it, and right now, nobody can get through. On the 28th of February 2026, the United States and Israel launched joint airstrikes on Iran. Within hours, Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, and the price of oil began climbing in a way the world had never seen. The Strait of Hormuz is the most important 33 kilometers of water on Earth. Through it flows oil from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, the UAE and Iran, heading to China, India, Japan, South Korea, and Europe. Qatar supplies 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas. On March 2nd, after an Iranian drone attack, Qatar declared force majeure, meaning it legally could not deliver the gas it had promised to the world. Saudi Arabia's Ras Tanura, the biggest crude oil export terminal in the world, also shut down after attacks. At its peak, Ras Tanura handles more than 6 million barrels of oil every single day. At the pump, Americans felt it first. In the last week of February, the average gallon of gas cost just under $3. By March 19th, it hit $3.89, a jump of nearly $1 in 3 weeks. Oil briefly touched $120 a barrel during the worst days. For context, $100 was already considered an emergency price. Goldman Sachs warned that a prolonged conflict could push oil to $150, which would send inflation across the entire global economy. In Asia, governments declared emergencies. Thailand told state agencies to work from home. Bangladesh, which imports 95% of its energy, imposed fuel caps and shut universities. The Philippines watched its peso collapse. Airlines became unexpected victims. The strait closure forced flights to avoid Middle Eastern airspace, adding hours to routes from Europe to Asia. Ticket prices on some routes doubled overnight. Thousands of passengers were stranded. The Strait of Hormuz has been threatened before. Iran has rattled the saber many times, but it has never actually closed the strait. This time was different, and the world had no plan for it. The economics are brutal. Every day the strait is closed, the world loses access to 7 to 10 million barrels of oil. The global economy runs on about 100 million barrels a day. This is not a disruption, this is a crisis. China and India together consume nearly 70% of the oil that passes through the strait. They are not in this war, but they are paying for it in halted refineries, emergency reserve drawdowns, and economies scrambling for supply. The International Energy Agency was pushed to consider the largest emergency oil reserve release in its history. Strategic reserves from the US, Europe, Japan, and South Korea were activated. The world was spending down its savings to buy time. Oil tanker captains face an impossible choice: pass through the strait under threat of attack, or take the route around the Cape of Good Hope, adding 15 days and hundreds of thousands in extra fuel costs per voyage. There are signs of resolution. On March 19th, oil fell from its peak as Trump said U.S. troops would not be deployed on the ground, and Netanyahu signaled no more strikes on Iranian energy infrastructure. But prices have not come back down. The world has learned something it cannot unlearn. What the world has seen in March 2026 is what economists call a supply shock. Not because the oil ran out, but because the pipe that carries it runs through one of the most contested pieces of water on Earth, and someone finally turned it off. This crisis exposed something the world already knew but chose to ignore. The global economy remains almost entirely dependent on fossil fuels that travel through a handful of choke points: the Strait of Hormuz, the Suez Canal, the Strait of Malacca. Whoever controls those straits controls the world. The renewable energy argument has never been stronger. Every wind turbine, every solar panel, every battery system is infrastructure that cannot be blockaded in a strait, but building it takes decades. And right now, the world still runs on oil. The strait will likely reopen. Oil prices will likely come down. The world will likely go back to business as usual. And that is exactly the problem. Because this has happened before, and it will happen again. And every time it does, the price of having done nothing will be a little bit higher.